What is going on, YouTube? So today, coming back to my next set of NFL rankings. So I tried to do my offensive linemen, but I actually went through and did the list and figured out that not only is it hard to come up with statistical proof of why you have linemen ranked where they are, I just don't have I don't have the, I guess, offensive lineman knowledge to be able to rank them out, I guess, 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, however I was going to do them, and them actually be accurate. So I'm just actually going to skip over it, and I'm going to move straight into my defensive lineman rankings. So again, with the defensive linemen, I was thinking about separating them into defensive end and then defensive tackles, but then you also have to take into account the difference between a 4-3 and then a 3-4 defensive end. So I'm just doing straight defensive linemen, and then I'll do linebackers after that. So I'm going to be doing my top 10 and then 3 outside. And again, this is still a little bit hard to do because there's not really a set order of defensive linemen. It's hard to compare the rankings between defensive tackles and defensive ends, but I'm doing my best. So at number 3 on 3 outside, I've got the defensive tackle for the New England Patriots. Actually switches a little bit between D tackle and D end, but that is Jabal Sheard. So Jabal Sheard has really broken onto the scene, especially last year. Had 8 sacks, 37 combined tackles. Not exactly sure how many he had for loss. I don't think it says over there, but nonetheless, he's extremely athletic. He's a good run stopper up the middle or on the edge, and like I said, he really does set the edge when he plays. He's a good anchor wherever, and between him and Chandler Jones, it was a very formidable defensive line for the New England Patriots, but Chandler Jones has moved on. Anyway, move on to number 2 on my 5 outside, and I got the Seattle Seahawks, Cliff Averill. So Averill has been a monster ever since he went to Seattle. 9 total sacks this year, 47 combined tackles, and he leads what is maybe the best defensive line in football with the Seattle Seahawks, and you combine him and Michael Bennett, that might be the 2 best sets, or the best set of defensive ends in the entire NFL. I really do like what Cliff Averill brings to the table for the Seattle Seahawks. Like I said, ever since he left Detroit, went to Seattle, he's been nothing short of one of the best defensive ends in the NFL. So at number 1, I've got the New Orleans Saints, Cam Jordan. So Cam Jordan broke into the league 2011 and really was one of the few bright spots for the New Orleans Saints. Horrendous defense this year. The Saints have not had a good defense in a couple years. It's really been a team that's revolved around the offense, Drew Brees, all that stuff. If you're familiar with the Saints, that's pretty obvious. I think you noticed Cam Jordan, though, did have 10 sacks last year, 45 total tackles. And like I said, if the Saints can improve the defense this year, and I think they will, I've had them taking mostly defenders. I think they really do need a linebacker at their pick. If they're able to set a linebacker there, maybe pick up a cornerback in free agency, maybe have 3-4 guys to build around on that team, then I think this will be a very good team moving in, or not a very, well, yeah, actually a very good team moving into the future, because they might actually have something to set up with on defense. I do think they need something to build around on defense, though. Besides Cam Jordan, he obviously is a stud. He's one of the better defensive ends in the NFL, and like I said, I think he needs a little bit of help back there. So at number 10, moving into the top 10, I have the former Miami Dolphin, now signed as a New York Giant, Olivier Vernon. So Vernon last year had 7.5 sacks with 61 combined tackles, and he really was a very, very key piece to a Dolphins defense that was a little bit underrated this year. He was on a good defensive line with Ndamukong Suh, and really should be on what I think is an underrated defensive line already in New York. People have kind of jumped over the fact that the defensive line actually wasn't bad before. I mean, wasn't great, but the fact the rest of the defense was pretty bad overshadowed the fact that there actually was some key pieces of that defensive line that were really good, including Jason Pierre-Paul and Robert Ayers. And now the fact that they add another top-end defensive end just makes that line that much better. But move on to my number 9, I've got the Carolina Panthers defensive tackle, and that's Quan Short. So I would have Quan Short higher some of the guys higher than him are a little bit more proven and have been good for a little bit longer, have been consistent for a little bit longer. But nonetheless, let me see if I can actually pull up his stats. I actually don't have them up right now. I will come back to his stats when I can. Like I said, broke out with the Carolina Panthers this year, was part of a Carolina Panthers defensive line that I think can be very, very good heading into the future. They've got good pieces really all over that defense. You stretch from the defensive line, I think Coney Ealy will be a very solid piece heading into the future. Obviously, they're set with Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis at linebacker, re-signing, or I believe they franchise tagged Josh Norman. That was a big thing to do. And like I said, I think that they've made a lot of the right moves to be able to move into the future with the same consistency on defense that they were able to have this year with one of the best defenses in the NFL. So I can't find his stats right now. Once I pull them up, I'll let you guys know on that. But anyway, number 8, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals defensive tackle, and that is Geno Adkins. So Adkins has been one of the centerpieces of Bengals defense that's had a lot of depth for a couple years now. He actually was, I believe, tied for 7th in the league with 11 sacks. And for a defensive tackle, that is extraordinarily good. 42 combined tackles. And like I said, I think, in my mind, one of the best parts, if not the best part, of a Bengals defense that's actually been very good over the past few years. They do lose a few pieces. I believe they do lose Leon Hall, but they did re-sign Pac-Man Jones. They re-signed George Aloka, bring back Carlos Dunlap, and that should be a good defense again. So at number 7, I've got the Miami Dolphins' Cameron Wake. So I believe Wake missed quite a bit of time this year. Had 7 sacks, 9 combined tackles. Let me see how many games he actually played in this year. He only played in 4 or 5 games this year. So when healthy, one of the best defensive ends / edge rushers in the league. Obviously came over from Canada a couple of years ago, been one of the main focal points of a Dolphins defense. Like I said, that actually did have a pretty good defensive line last year. Like I said, including Ndamukong Suh, including Olivier Vernon, who is now gone. And I think even with Vernon gone, it'll be a good defensive line again this year. So at number 6, I've got the former New England Patriot, now Arizona Cardinal, and that is Chandler Jones. So it is a little bit of a mystery to me why the Patriots traded Chandler Jones. It's been talked about that there might be something with his health. There might be something that Bill Belichick has saw at the beginning of the offseason that everyone else hasn't, that just turned him off. And, I mean, I just think that Chandler Jones is one of the best defensive ends in the league. He's long. He's able to get to the quarterback like very few others are able to do. 12.5 sacks, good for 5th in the NFL this year. 44 total tackles, led that Patriots defense. One's gotten a little bit worse over the years, but they didn't. I mean, Chris Long's good, but he's nowhere near Chandler Jones right now. Anyway, I think that Chandler Jones will be on. Honestly, I could see him being even better with the Cardinals opposite Calais Campbell. The Cardinals needed help on the defensive line, and they definitely got it. So at number 5, I've got the LA Rams defensive tackle, one of the best young defensive tackles in the NFL, if not the. I don't know about the best, but anyway, Aaron Donald. So Aaron Donald led a Rams defensive line along with Robert Quinn that is actually pretty underrated. I was mentioning, actually, it got a little bit of spotlight in the middle of the year, but Aaron Donald, a guy that had 11 sacks, 69 combined tackles this year, good for, I believe, 3rd best along defensive tackles in the NFL this year, and he's just been an absolute monster. He's actually been the main comparison if you talk about people that you strive to be. I'm trying to think of a good example here. Sheldon Rankins is a good one to use when you are using an example of what to be a top flight defensive tackle in the NFL in only your, I believe it's 3rd NFL season. See, 2nd or 3rd. Yeah, you're doing something right. So anyway, move on to number 4, and I've got the New York Jets defensive tackle Muhammad Wilkerson. So Wilkerson, again, one of the better, or has definitely established himself as one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL. 12 sacks, 64 64 combined tackles this past year, and in my opinion, the best player on the Jets defense. Darrelle Revis, but I think that's true at this point. So at number 3, I've got the Seattle Seahawks, Michael Bennett. So you could put up an argument that Michael Bennett is the best defensive end in the league. Statistically, he wasn't quite that this year, but just overall talent-wise, how he's been the last couple of years, leading that Seahawks defense, he's just a perfect combination for that Seahawks defense, along with Averill, mentioned that earlier. And last year had 10 sacks, 52 combined tackles, so definitely no slouch, or definitely not like bad stats at all. Might have taken a little bit of a step back just because of how I don't know if that would affect him much, but anyway, move on to number 2, and I have the Detroit Lions defensive end, the incredibly athletic Ezekiel Ansah. So I really like the way Ezekiel Ansah is progressing in the league. He's a guy that is one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best defensive ends, if not the best. He consistently is able to put up, I wouldn't say consistently able to put up top flight stats, but he's consistently able to look like one of the most athletic defensive ends in the league. He's an absolute freak, in my opinion. Again, best player on the Lions defense. So he was able to put up 14.5 sacks, good for 3rd in the league, and 47 combined tackles. And yeah, like I said, in my opinion, could be one of the best, if not the best, defensive linemen in the league for about 5-6 years to come. Still young, and like I said, best player on the Lions defense. So at number 1, I've got the Houston Texans, best defensive end / defensive tackle, and that is J.J. Watt. So clear-cut best defensive player in the league right now. 17.5 sacks, again, good for 2.5 more than the second place sack leader in the NFL, Khalil Mack. And 76 combined tackles, good for, I believe, 2nd among defensive linemen. And he's just an absolute freak. Obviously, everyone who knows who J.J. Watt is, he's been talked that he maybe should have won the MVP last year. And definitely the leader of a Houston Texans defense that is actually very good. Kind of gets overshadowed a little bit because of the fact that the offense is so incompetent. But with Brock Osweiler and Lamar Miller in town, it might be a little bit different this year. Might be a little bit more dangerous. But yeah, that pretty much concludes this video. Before I go, let me see if I can pull up Quan short stats, because I feel like I need to find that now. And yeah, like I said, this was a video that was kind of hard to come up with just because defensive linemen, like I said, a lot like offensive line, not quite as hard, but is hard to come up with stats to back up the list. There's not very many ranking lists to go off of. There's a few stats that you can go off of, but there's not like QBR or anything like that you can commonly look up. There's not fantasy football stats that you see all the time that kind of form in your mind as a ranking list. So, like I said, it's something that's a little bit harder to do. And okay, so 2015, 11 sacks and 55 combined tackles. So, yeah, that pretty much does it. Like I said, fun video to do, one that I don't get to do that often, talking about defensive linemen. And like I said, a position that's not really overlooked by any means. It's still a big position in the NFL, still commands big money, still has big names, but one that's not talked about in the way of ranking lists a lot, which, like I said, is kind of fun to do when you get to talk outside of the box a little bit compared to what people normally do with quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, those sort of positions. So tomorrow I'll be coming back to my linebackers, like I said, and then I will probably be doing cornerbacks, then safeties, and then some combination of special teams players, and then wrap it up with the overall top 50, which I will be doing. I'm not sure if I'm going to do top 50 or top 100 yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough for top 100, but if I do, then I'll do that. So that's pretty much it. So yeah, couple weeks, days, months down the line, then the link to the entire playlist will be in the description below. So like I said, today I will be doing running backs, and I'll be doing the top 10 for that again. I did top 10 quarterbacks yesterday. When I run into a little bit more of a depth position like wide receiver, I might extend it to like top 20 or something like that.